Welcome, everybody. We're excited to be here for the Smart Building Collective podcast to dive into the world of WasteTracker today. We're going to talk about their solution certification, but everything around their business as well and what they're up to, how they're redefining waste management in the built environment. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Renata Hartle onto the stage, who is the CEO and co-founder of WasteTracker. And Renata, let's start with a little bit where this came from. I think you guys are really forging new ground when it comes to waste management in the built environment. There's not a lot of solutions out there to track waste and to manage it to the level that you all are doing that. So yeah, how did the idea come about, and how did you guys get started to where you are already making huge waves and traction in the market?
Thank you for having me and welcome everybody who's listening. WasteTracker was born March last year, so we're a pretty fresh company, just a year and a half in the market, and we're currently working with over 120 buildings around 5 countries in Europe. And our ambition is to become the global waste benchmark for commercial real estate. And it all came from the need from clients. I used to work as a smart building director with Colliers, and I helped landlords bring technology to their buildings. Over last years, lots of things around ESG, the reporting procedures, how to collect data on the portfolio level, building level, and the occupier level, which was the most challenging in terms of waste. Uh, and I just couldn't find anything in the market that existed and would tackle the real estate perspective well. There are some solutions, as you said, they do digital waste tracking on a smart city perspective or some reporting perspective, but they were really lacking the holistic view on providing hardware to measure waste, providing software to manage, and to easily report on the portfolio building at the occupier level. So working with Invesco on their trophy asset in Warsaw, I came to this challenge in a very really small detail, and built a WasteTracker from scratch, trying to respond first to the basic need, which was lack of precise data, and then follow with that to tackle the challenge of waste management, costs, and how we can really change how much waste is produced in the built environment.
I'd like to start with, as entrepreneurs, we often get surprised or get challenged by the market once we start delivering for the market. It's not always what we expect it to be. And
Mhm.
sometimes, they say, don't fall in love with your product, fall in love with your customer and try and figure out how to serve them better. What are kind of the biggest surprises that have emerged so far for you in the waste tracking business? So what are your customers kind of latching on to the most, and what
Mhm.
did you think was going to be really, really easy that isn't easy? What are the biggest surprises so far?
I think the biggest challenge with waste is that there is really not much knowledge about it in the world. It's been this blind spot, out of sight, out of mind. It goes somewhere down to the waste disposal room, and no one's actually having troubles with it until it really blows. There's too much waste. There's not a good management. The fees increase, um, but the challenge that real estate has on the global perspective is really data. Office occupiers are really unable to compare their different locations, how much waste is produced in Berlin office, in London office, in Madrid office. How does it calculate per square meter, per employee? What are the landfill disposal numbers? How much waste goes to recycling? What their segregation rates? And they all need to report it now. Big occupiers have to comply with ESG directives, and many of them are in stock market. They have to provide data, and it's very challenging for landlords and property managers to deliver this data to them because they are lacking good building data. And even if they have some kind of version of building data, they only acceptable calculations per square meter. So I've been working with big four clients that had this challenge of getting certain percentage of total estimated waste in building. And even though they were trying very hard and implementing different zero waste initiatives, they couldn't really measure that they had a good impact on the planet by lowering amount of waste, increasing segregation rates, or lowering the amounts of waste sent to landfill, because it was all based in estimation. And the challenge is that a property manager in Berlin, in London, and in Madrid can do different types of estimations. So the one in Berlin may assume that one big container of paper is 98 kilograms, and another one may assume that it's 115. And the third one will actually have some data from the collector that does this assumption for them. So it's very tricky to really come down to numbers and say, okay, we really know what's going on.
Actually know, yeah, for instance, I think in a lot of countries you get data from the collector, right? It's also important to be checking that work to make sure it's
Yes.
accurate and to make sure that you are aligned with what their estimates are, because in the end you're being charged by that. So that's really kind of the biggest surprise to you, is that the data just didn't exist at all.
Exactly, the lack of alignment, because even if there are some countries that have some more advanced systems or reporting, they will still have lots of struggles in how this data is collected and reconciliated tenants' numbers.
Think the timing is impeccable as well, right? With all the ESG reporting and the EU directives that are coming out. So we're going to talk a little bit about the solution certification that you all just achieved with us. Talking about, building usage, how we kind of manage and measure how an asset's being utilized. We're going to
Mhm,
talk about the building performance and the ESG standards, which we just touched on a little bit. And then the other ones are a little bit, user behavior and collaboration, of course, is very important. Making sure that
mhm,
we can bring a different way of thinking about waste within this. But before I want to dive into those, let's first say, how does it work on a practical level? Because I think
mhm.
waste tracking, people are wondering how to do it. How does your all solution work in practical terms?
So our solution provides three elements. First element is hardware. We provide a WasteTracker terminal that register waste in terms of weight and source uh, that comes in to the waste disposal room. And we have a terminal that weighs and tracks the waste pickups, so landlords can understand how much waste was picked from the building, at what time, by what type of waste collection company, and how much it costed. So they can compare in our software of how much waste comes in, when the pickup should happen, and if it's relevant in terms of cost, number of containers, number of pickups, and so on. And each occupier has access to their own analytics, understanding how much waste they produce, what are their segregation rates, who are the cleaners that bring the waste, and what are their targets. We also allow tenants to track their initiatives to understand if we're doing an initiative, let's say, paperless office, where we eliminate possibilities of printing materials and so on. What is the direct impact on our waste and the recycling rates? Do we lower the carbon, and by how much? And we measure it in time to help understand the impact. And the third, last but not least, element of our system is zero waste mentorship. We take time to really understand and analyze data with our clients to provide them insightful and actionable knowledge based on this data, in benchmark of other properties and what has worked with other clients. So no one has to reinvent the wheel over and over again.
Change management piece, that engagement with the community, engagement with the cleaners, engagement with the people that are actually using the asset is so
Mhm.
fundamental. And what have you guys learned in that process so far as how to do this properly? If I was a building that was thinking about starting to get a handle on my waste, what are the elements that I should be
Mhm.
thinking about that make it either feasible and doable, or the challenge that says, yeah, that's not going to work?
The best way to start the process is to start. to not try to fix all the problems and all the challenges we think we have connected with waste, but start measuring to understand the starting point. We say that first 3 to 6 months is usually the data collection to really understand the patterns, the sources of waste, and how the segregation works to then address it. Like if we try to do everything at once, we will have a result, but it will be pretty chaotic. Yes, so capturing the starting point is pretty important. It's like creating an energy model, I would say. We understand what is like happening in the building or expected to happen in the building, and then we measure the energy consumption and see what are the sources, how much energy we use from heating up the building, cooling down the building, getting people in and out from the building, and so on. And the same is with waste. How much waste comes from common spaces? How much waste comes from tenants? Maybe from some shared spaces like a conference center. What types of waste do we have there? Is it a segregation rate that we waste from common shared toilets because of the amount of paper towels and so on? And when we look at that, then we can decide on initiatives that will help lower the waste, increase the segregation, and eventually be reflected on the cost. We keep measuring it and watching the period of when the change in the containers number pickup schedule should impact the cost change. So that's a whole cycle. But we recommend to do small steps rather than big leaps because this is such a new area for so many people that having an understanding of how other assets are performing in our portfolio and why one asset is thriving in segregation and has great composting on site and another is really struggling with having 80% mixed waste.
I think we see that in all smart building deployments is that organizations also need to be ready for the deployment that they're taking on. And by doing it a little bit at a time and getting started and learning as you go is absolutely the way to think about it, because I think trying to do everything at once can be quite challenging. Look at the smart building certification framework and methodology when we certify buildings. Building usage is kind of that first module that we focus on, which is how is your asset being used? How is occupancy being measured and managed? How is access being measured and managed? How are we making sure that we're managing amenities in a useful way? How does the waste data, how granular is it? And are you able to support in the discussion around usage of an asset? And in what way do you do that?
It's very relevant to connect different types of data with waste. Usage is one of the key ones. I would say energy consumption and other media would be the second, because there is a really clear correlation of how many people come to the building with how much waste is produced and what type of people come to the building. Are those one-time visitors, recurring visitors? Are we hosting events in the building, or people don't show up because it's just before Christmas and everyone is out? Why do we have a typical schedule of waste pickup containers if there are no people coming and producing waste? At the same time, if people are not coming, but there is the same or bigger amount of waste, that is a big proof of inefficiency. And I often say that waste is a sign of inefficiency. Whatever has been designed that you're using and you put it to waste is been designed in an inefficient way because the life cycle of this product was too short, or it had elements that were not worth of being used. And it comes to packaging, it comes to like events organization and working with what we recommend, zero waste catering. Like if you have an event and you have caterer that leaves 200 kilograms of waste behind, that's a very inefficient caterer. And this is what we provide. It's to understand really on daily life how those data correlate. So if we know how many people come, how many people go, we can really like plan together with this data on number one, what we can expect in waste, where we can find efficiencies to cut, and then how the waste pickup schedule should be designed to maintain the cost on the lower side.
Wow. I actually didn't expect that answer. I thought that that's really brilliant. We often say with smart, it's limited by our creativity and how we use
Mhm.
this data and this technology. And I'd love to hear, what asset classes are you in? I was in a car factory last week where we were seeing the manufacturing of automobiles. And it just got me thinking based on what you just said, each one of those, streams that's building those cars produces a certain amount of waste, and they can correlate it exactly to the amount of cars that are coming off the line, the amount of waste that's going. So I can imagine a solution like yours can really help that process and improve it in so many ways.
Absolutely. I often think about it also from the real estate perspective on how people work with fit out and general like building construction and renovation. Because before BEAM, we had so much waste just coming from ordering extra material just in case, because we couldn't get to the exact calculation of how much carpet, cable, and so on should be ordered to the site. So digital tools are really helping to be more accurate and to manage the materials better. And I'm like really glad that legislation is going towards that side to push producers to focus on amounts of waste they produce, because over last 25 years the main focus of the world was on recycling and segregation, but that's the last thing that can save us. The main thing is we produce way too much waste. The amounts of waste that are produced in the world are just growing like crazy. And the World Bank predicts that if we don't change anything today, in 2050, we'll have 70% more waste in the world. And that means we will have more plastic waste in ocean than fish waste. It has to be addressed. And if we're thinking from efficiency and inefficiencies in buildings, it's interesting to see on how buildings that are 20 years, 30 years old, how their waste disposal rooms were designed to be super small spaces, and they didn't even comprehend there will be so many waste types, containers to be included there. So we see that this challenge goes across asset classes. Today, we mostly work with office buildings and with shopping malls. We see that shopping malls have a really big challenge on waste, especially coming from food courts and tenants that have a constant deliveries and all the packaging that's left behind. And what we want to do in the future is also hotels and light industrial. So we do have some clients interested, as you said, from the car manufacturer factory, of actually measuring their waste and when it's produced and from which line, so they don't get a general number in the end of the month, but they can understand that different production lines, different crews, and different shifts produce and segregate waste in a different way.
So much to unpack there. I think if we move to the next module, which is about building performance, and we talk about, ESG sustainability practices, this is really where the legislation comes into effect, and we are mapping solutions against this legislation. And I think what Waste Tracker is doing is incredible because a lot of smart building is about the building performance, like we've talked about energy and water, these types of things. And waste is very much a human, a
Mhm.
construct of how we manage these things. How do you see the infrastructure taking shape? Not, what the building kind of plugs into, the collectors. I've heard a lot that recycling programs are actually diminishing more and more. So you have your kind of finger on the pulse there of how are those infrastructures in place to collect the waste? Is that improving? Is that getting worse? And how does the EU legislation of reporting, how is that taking shape around waste?
It's definitely a challenge because we see that by from country to country there are different ways of how waste is collected, how the waste types are described, and how the segregation is made easy or difficult for individual users and for cleaning personnel. Um, for example, in Middle East, we see that lots of office buildings will still have the waste disposal chutes that come from 20th floor down to the room, and it's it's very different. Yes, there is no standardization across the globe. At the same time, we see more and more of the big press containers because the amounts of waste have increased so much that the waste doesn't fit those waste cabins. And it's more and more challenging to basically make sure that people put the waste and keep it compact. So those compactors or press containers, however we call them, they are becoming a practice, and it's not a best practice for all the types of waste. So, for example, for paper, cardboard is a really good solution, but we see that they also sometimes cover mixed waste, and that should it's not very ESG because people put in mixed waste sometimes things that can be recycled, and we know that in statistical data from European Union there is still quite a big percentage of waste that is being recycled from mix, because when the collector takes it to their facility they put it on the conveyor belt and they have different technology to still like scrape some metal pieces, plastic pieces, maybe some Tetra Pak, and they take it to recycling. If you use the compactor for mixed waste, whoever puts a Tetra Pak in between chicken bones and that gets all smashed together, it, there's no way to recover it. So there is still a lot of work to do on this basic level, but without data and understanding, is compactor even making such a big difference for you in terms of pricing? If we would increase segregation rate and you would have less mix, but more paper, more plastic, more metal, uh, that would be probably more cost efficient because recyclables are usually cheaper to be picked up from the building than mix. And we would have a better result for the planet and for the pocket.
I think where it starts, right, is so I mean, if somebody throws something into the chute, you have no track of where it's coming from at all, and you have no way of getting anywhere into the insight of what is in that waste. So how do you all kind of ensure that you know where the waste is coming from, and how are you already starting to figure out what's in that waste? How does your solution?
What we do is we recognize people who bring waste to the waste room through their identification card or card in Apple Wallet or whatever technology we can use. It can be QR codes, barcodes, whatsoever. And thanks to that, we can identify the source of waste, but also provide them their individual experience with a language that they speak, because often the cleaners that work in Germany don't speak German, they speak Arabic or Ukrainian. So we allow them to use the system in their native language to make it easier for them and to also increase their interest in actually segregating waste by understanding what type of waste is managed in the building. We do not yet recognize or scan the bags, boxes, and things that are brought in because it's, from technological perspective, pretty difficult when someone brings a whole big bag and you'd have to scan it. But at the same time, we work on big data to understand that someone's bringing only mixed waste, so you can see on individual level what is this cleaner bringing. And then we take information or public information, individual reports on the collectors, on the results of treatment for waste. So we can understand what results they get in terms of catching still something that can be recycled through the conveyor belt, because they will report that, for example, for mixed waste, they managed to recover for recycling 22% of waste. They sent to composting 10% of the total waste they managed on their facility, and how much waste they sent to incineration with energy recovery or not. And better collectors' performance, better their score, and possibility to win new contracts. And I think that will very much mm, like create new paths for collectors to work in a more efficient way, because they will know that their clients are expecting that, and through data clients can check. It's not only, oh, we believe you're such an environmental friendly collector, but what results do you really achieve and how much am I paying for it?
So that interplay between the data that you all are collecting and the collectors feeding back into that, you start to really give buildings the analytics and the direction and the things that they should be thinking about when trying to make these better.
Like if you have the transparency and you understand what you're paying for and what are the real results, it's easier to take a decision or put a pressure. If the whole market knows exactly how much they're spending compared to, the market standards and how much waste they produce, if this is a good result or not, and also understand their collector sides, then they can take decisions of what to push and what not to push. If we would not have the energy bill, we would not really understand what am I paying for. And that's how it is with waste. You usually get a monthly invoice. You will sometimes have notes of how many containers were taken. In more advanced locations, yes, you will know a little bit more, but you still don't know when did this waste come, how long was it stored in the cabin, uh, who brought it, and comparable to others. Am I good? Am I bad?
So powerful, but then it informs the front side, right? How it gets into the bins, how it gets collected, how it then gets, sorted and put into the right scales based
Mhm.
on what it is. How do you all help that process? How do you help the cleaners to the asset owners and the asset users to do that better? Because I think once you
Mhm.
have data, you have the ability and insight to make changes. And I think you're on
Yes.
that precipice there.
Trying to do that very strongly today with mentorship. So we meet with our clients over a certain period of time regularly to look through the data and to help them find actionable insights of what they can really do, comparable to the market standards and what we know works through our knowledge as certified zero waste auditors. But what we really want to achieve is the full digitalization of the mentorship. So, but this is something that is still work in progress. Yeah, and I really appreciate all our clients who are with us today because they are so invested into really making this work better and better together. And every meeting we have, questions we get, something they show us, like why does it work this way, opening the back door and showing invoices, contracts they have with waste collectors, builds up our knowledge. And because we are in 5 countries, in 120 buildings, then we have way more knowledge than any other waste auditor today. That we are based on real data. So we really see the differences in numbers and the differences in management practices. And that's how we want to connect it through the system, that a system will identify these inefficiencies by itself and will learn and teach.
Amazing. And then, of course, you see the differences per country. You see the differences in collection practices, in
Yes.
recycling practices, in the way that the infrastructure is set up. So I think
Mm,
those critical masses per country are so important. And so we encourage
absolutely.
those where the countries are not yet represented to get the ball rolling so that we can start to catch that data as well, because I think that's just so important. Which countries are they and which ones are you actually hoping to go into next?
The countries where we're operationally in is Poland, where we are originally from, Czech Republic and Romania, Luxembourg, and France. Our next key market is Germany, bigger scale in Benelux, and the UK. And I would say we're very close in opening those markets still this year.
Really interesting to map those differences and to see how things can be improved.
I find it like so interesting that waste is part of building media, and the way that other media works, like electricity, water, heat, gas, and so on, is that they came to the world way later than waste, because waste was born 510 years before Christ. There was a first law to manage waste in the city. It was in Athens. And until today, we really don't have a way of how globally we measure it and we manage it and we report it. while electricity, from the moment it was invented to the metering system, it was just like 200 years, and the whole world is using meters. So now with a race of AI, there is a plug and play solutions where you can, based on this data that the world has generated, make better impact. And with waste, we just have to catch up for all those years that we're lacking back.
So do you see that? What's the driving force behind that? Is it just cost? Is it's never cost that much, so it was never that big of a deal kind of thing? Or
Cost, the challenge of dealing with waste, and generally the climate change, the impact on the planet, because waste is not only cost, it's not only carbon footprint, it's also a challenge from destroying our planet's biodiversity. And if we destroy biodiversity, there is no way that the planet can recreate itself and fight with all the carbon we're producing. So it's really important that we address this problem now, not when we are basically buried with waste and there is no more places to take waste. And
why hasn't waste gotten the priority in the past, do you think?
because we still feed the waste in our waste disposal rooms, and the waste flow was managed very locally, usually by a family business. There are few companies that are kind of international players, and they still have hard time coming to majority of European cities. And I think through data and transparency, we can make this market a little bit more down to earth and serving clients and planet.
Yeah, I hope you guys are very, very, very successful in your quest, because it's such an important piece of the whole puzzle that needs to be brought together. When we look at the SBC framework, it's brought together with connectivity and infrastructure. So I'd love to ask you, how difficult is it to realize your platform, from a infrastructure and from a connectivity perspective? And then secondly, it's about integrative design. How does WasteTracker integrate with other solutions? Is that a priority? Is that something you guys are working on? And what does that deliver if you are doing that?
So from connectivity perspective, our device needs power and internet. We can get internet through Wi-Fi, LAN, or GSM. We use very powerful LTE antennas that can capture GSM signal even in the basement, to provide power internet connectivity to our device and to keep data flow live. So it takes usually up to 30 days. Like, we give that guarantee that if you give us a green light, you will have WasteTracker fully operational in the building within 30 days. And I forgot what you asked in the end.
How do you all integrate with other solutions and other platforms?
We integrate with two different types of platforms today. It's ESG reporting platforms such as DeepKey, Building Mind, Singu FM, and many others. And we integrate with building tenant experience or management platforms where we provide data both on the building level and tenant level. So, for example, if someone's using smart spaces, Spaceflow, Sherry, Zapfloor, we integrate to them to provide this data as a one source of truth for the building ESG performance. Of course, because we are so focused on waste and we're so passionate about waste, we grow our analytics and our system all the time. So every month we release something new. So often we say that, for the big picture, we provide this data in ESG reporting in other platforms. But if you want to work on a more detailed level with your waste and you want to find insights, we invite you to go to WasteTracker, where you get very in-depth analysis of waste. But of course, if our partners in the future find ways to visualize waste insights in their platforms, we're happy to provide that too. What I see now in the market of smart is that, because if you have a very specific solution that covers this very specific area like waste, it's easier to give big data for the ESG dashboards. And then if you want granularity of data, provide an iframe experience where the user of the system doesn't necessarily understand that this is not a dashboard of the provider of the app, but the provider of the waste analytics. But then you have access to everything that's new, because that's the biggest benefit of having a SaaS solution in your building, that it constantly evolves.
I think what WasteTracker has done is you've helped us catch up to the 21st century, and I think that there's still a lot of work to be done, right? I think that there is actually no reason that the collector and the actual and the people entering it isn't a connected system. And I think the work you all are doing to make that happen is so admirable, and I think it's so important. It's such a piece of it's such an important piece of work that we're doing. But you're also, you brought this to the market, to catch us up to the 21st century. But I know you to have also a very strong vision for the future. And what do you hope to see happen in the coming 10 years? And what are the pillars of the change that you would like to see kind of accelerated, and what can other people do to help that happen?
That's a challenging question, because we see that there are, as with everything in terms of providing innovative solutions, there are early adopters, there's early majority, and then there's late majority and laggers that will basically not give a peep until they're forced. So I think it needs to go hand in hand with regulations. And the question is like, what's the first, chicken or an egg? I think we really gave an egg to show that precise measurement of waste is possible. It's possible to get this data on the granular level. It's possible to track the pickups regardless the collector, and it's possible to compare this data from different locations in the same way, apple to apple. So now we really hope that, number one, biggest landlords will take this portfolio approach of, okay, just as we have energy metering, we want to have waste metering across the geographies and provide the same experience to our occupiers, and that at the same time that the legislation will be pushed to for waste to be reported by the companies, not only on the highest levels, the one that are in stock market, but everyone.
EU legislation, well, the global legislation to kind of mandate that waste needs to be one of the metrics that's within the element. And what do you see as far as how it should be educated, how it should be, yeah, pushed beyond legislation? Because I think
Mhm.
legislation, we can wait an awful long time for that to actually happen and to it actually be pushed. What can we do to make it move a little bit faster? And what would you ask for?
Mhm. Yeah, I think this is the most challenging part, because we see that new generations care about planet, and they worry about our climate change way more than older generations. At the same time, older generations produced way less waste because they lived their life in a little more simple way. They didn't use that much casual dining or picking up lunches, ordering cater lunches, breakfasts, and dinners to their homes. Uh, but at the same time, I have a really big challenge to blame individuals. I think the system must change. There must be limits on plastic production, limits on single packaging, using, like, when I see people buying bread using those single use foil bags, like, it hurts, because this bag lifespan is 12 minutes in average. And like, what options do you have? Stores kind of force you to use them. Otherwise, you feel like germs everywhere. Yeah. So I think it should really come to the biggest companies, biggest producers, and really redefine of packaging, and the same way as European Union treated chargers and ends for chargers. It's not the most, innovation powering thing that everyone can design their own packaging from their own materials. There should be some standardization.
I think it starts with
Hmm.
showing everybody how big of a problem this stuff really is, and how big the challenges are.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, we've seen lots and lots of documentaries and lots of films and written content and everything about these issues. So it is
Hmm.
up to industry, individuals, as well as legislation to make changes here. But
Yes.
having you all in the mix, helping to analyze the data, helping people to collect it, and making positive
Mhm.
change into how it gets created, that's absolutely a beautiful thing. So, how can people follow your work, and who are you looking to talk to that can reach out to you and get started on the journey? Who is the stakeholder within the space that
Mhm.
you work with most?
We work mostly with asset managers who want to increase the value of the asset through green initiatives and showing that the building is smart and can provide all layers of data to their occupiers. We're working with ESG representatives both on landlord and occupier side to help them figure out their reporting of waste. And we work with property managers that struggle with providing this data to occupiers. And the last but not least, we also work directly with occupiers who are struggling to get the data from their landlords and they want to implement a unified way of measuring waste across geographies. And of course, we are very active on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow our work and see what we do, what are the new things we're introducing, that's the place.
What about reseller model? Do you guys work with consultancy companies, individuals, people who say, "Hey, I really want to get involved. I would love to actually take this and put this into customers." How do you all work with them?
We absolutely do. My phone number is on our website. Just go to wastetracker.pro and give me a call if you would like to work with us. And we have people calling us out of the blue. We have partners we want to work with, and we are building relationships with them across geographies. So we're very much open because we understand that it takes a village to do the change.
That's why we do what we do, and you can get in touch with us as well. We'll put the solution certification for WasteTracker in the comments, and you guys can have a read, a deeper dive into the solution, and just reach out, and we'll get you connected with Renata and her team. Renata, thank you so much for your time. I know it's valuable. I know you're a very busy
Mhm.
person doing a lot right now, but thank you for your time and sharing your insights and for the work you're doing. I just think it's amazing.
Thank you for much spreading the word to the world.
Take care. Bye bye.